I'm Michael Ayers, Dean for Math, Science, and Technologies here at SciTech, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to the SciTech Lecture Series. This lecture series is really a real gem at SciTech. We have many national and local high-profile speakers who come to share their research or their ventures or their stories with us, and they're very inspiring and help us as academicians and students and employees to really put into perspective the world that we live in and what's going on in the sciences in particular. This effort is put on by the National Center for the Biotechnology Workforce, which is headed by Russ Reed, and we really appreciate the work that Russ and his team does to put on the SciTech lecture series. Also, it presents the best possible image for SciTech and the North Carolina Community College system. To date, we've had over 1,500 folks participate in these SciTech lectures, and they're rated very highly by folks who are completing surveys to rate the effectiveness of these different lectures. So with that said, I want to welcome you again for SciTech, and I'll introduce Dr. Kevin Conley, our Nanotechnology Program Coordinator, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Ayers, and welcome everyone to specifically today's speech by Dr. Roger Cubicciotti. Does live locally here with us here in the Triad Research Park, and I guess I'd like to begin by saying I know, after speaking to people from all over campus, why I was chosen to introduce our speaker today, and that's because I think I'm the only person who can properly pronounce Cubicciotti. Hopefully, I've got that one down. And I suppose that's a testament to how long I've in fact known Roger, since about 2007 when the nanotech program began, and in my mind, nano and bio started to come together. I'd also like to stress the fact that Dr. Cubicciotti has worked not only in California, but also in Boston, and he made a very decisive choice to come to North Carolina to found his business operations, and he is with us for the duration. He is with us in his investment of his time and his talents. Additionally, one thing that he often likes to say about himself is that when he went to UC Berkeley, he learned something very important about himself. He says that he learned that he was not smart. So, yes. So, there you go.
And I'm still learning.
Yes, very good, very good. Well, I'd like to tell you a few things about what he's done to support me, and of course to show you how he is quite smart, he is quite inspiring. And in particular, he's been supporting me, as I say, since 2007. He's a member of our Nanotechnology Advisory Board here at SciTech, and we've gone to meetings all over North Carolina for biotech, nanotech, and nanobiotech reasons, trying to begin programs in various places, trying to drum up support for funds, working with the government in particular. And there was this incident involving stopping into a subway and stealing one of their trays and never returning it. But, I still have to take you out for lunch at some point in time. So those are some of the things that he's really done for me and supported my program with network contacts a whole lot. The things that he's been able to do for himself and for the state is have great experiences in academia, of course work with dozens of startup companies as is mentioned in your bio, and also get to explore wonderful things in the space of bio-nano as it has developed in the last 20 years. But the most important thing I want you to take away from my little introduction is he's a great guy to work with. You couldn't ask for a better collaborator. And then finally, what can you get out of this by being here today? It's simple. You are about to witness a master class in listening with kindness and analysis in the scientific workplace. And it's very tough to bring those two things together. I think Dr. Cubicciotti can show you how.
Thank you, Kevin, for a very heartfelt introduction. I noticed you corrected my spelling on some of those phrases and words, but I really appreciate the sentiment. So if I can figure out how to get another set of slides up. Okay. So, uh-oh. So, how many of you have ever experienced feeling stressed? Has anybody experienced faint perceptions that something is missing? That there are too many things to do in a day than we can possibly get done in 24 hours? Anybody ever paid taxes? More importantly, has anybody ever not paid taxes? So if we could have just a minute here to decompress from the trials and tribulations of the traffic on Silas Creek. How many of you drove? Excellent. Okay. If we could just take a moment to relieve ourselves from some of the stresses on the way over here, I'd like to invite you to close your eyes for a moment, as I'm doing. Beth, no peeking. And let's imagine ourselves freeing ourselves from some of the things that may be bouncing around in our minds after a busy day. And imagine ourselves eagerly approaching a vacation. And we're driving off to a scene, our favorite scene. It may be the beach or the woods, lake, the in-laws. And we imagine ourselves arriving. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and we find our perfect spot and are looking out at nature, enjoying the masterful creation of the universe. And we're at peace. And with that in mind, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my perspective on the chemistry of teams. Actually, I'm pleased to point out that the last time I was here at the series, I had the pleasure of seeing Don DiBattisi speak. How many of you know Don? A true inspiration to our community. And I'm so honored by the opportunity to be here that I wore a coat and a tie, and if I had planned a little better, I would have gotten a haircut. So today's topic is the chemistry of teams. And after years of pursuing business and technology development, I have finally come to realize that the most important ingredient in terms of a successful endeavor or a successful team is the people behind the teams and the teams behind the people. Yeah, I guess that humor. Kevin correctly pronounced my name. As far as I understand, the Italian meaning of that name is 8 cubes. I don't know where that came from, but for future reference, I go by Roger, or Dr. Pepper, if you would prefer. And I'd like to thank Michael and Kevin and Mona and Russ for the opportunity to present here. So people, behind every team is people. And behind every person with an aspiration, there is a team. And I'd like to make that point today in a way that may seem a little bit unconventional, and I hope you will accept my perspective. Some of the favorite people in my life, this one in particular, is sitting over here in the front row. This is my wife, Connie, and she is often known to point out that we live in an abundant universe. Oftentimes we have tasks, we have goals, we have ventures, we have endeavors, and a common perception is that we don't have the resources to succeed in fulfilling our goals. I beg to differ. We have an abundance of resources throughout all walks of life, globally. And the most important thing in terms of accessing those resources is to clearly identify the resources we need and to engage them. They are typically people. We often think of resources as money, but the most important resources we can possibly acquire is the expertise of people. Another of my favorite people. I was inspired by Albert Einstein in 1973 when I read a book entitled Philosophy of Science. And in this book of essays, Einstein speculated in an essay entitled Meeting of the Minds that at that time, around the 40s, there were 12 people on this planet whom, gathered together with a shared purpose, could change the course of events of the entire universe. I interpret that to mean a couple of things. Number one, 12 people joined together with a common purpose means that we leave our egos at the door and that we aspire to do something that we can do together that we could not possibly accomplish alone. And then secondly, I believe that in this speculation, Einstein had a mathematical vision. His theory of relativity simply says that everything is relative, that the world as we know it may appear to be one thing from one person's perspective and another thing from another person's perspective. Those are relative truths. If we can assemble different perspectives, we get a picture of the entire elephant, if you will, if you've heard the story of the three blind men and the elephant. And so I believe that Einstein recognized that if we could bring a mathematician and a musician and an engineer and a historian and an artist and a carpenter to a gathering to define a problem and solve it, that the collection of those perspectives is much more powerful than any individual or small group. And along that line, I think it was Margaret Mead that said, for those of you who do not believe that a small group can change the world, it is, in fact, always a small group that changes the world. So a conventional team, and a lot of my comments today are about forming new ventures. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm involved with a number of companies. My most important priority is a small biotech company called NanoMedica. I also work with some nonprofits and other for-profit companies. I want to highlight here that the conventional approach to team building often is an inventory of the competencies that we need in order to pursue the different functions that need to be fulfilled in order to achieve a goal. And so we think of things like business and finance. Do we have any business finance people in the room? Okay, you can be on my team. Technology, intellectual property. I see Steve over here. I see Lucian as a technology purveyor, as is Beth, Kevin. Market research, product development, manufacturing transfer, marketing, customer support. These are all key functions that are required for a venture to succeed in providing valuable benefits to customers. Over the last, Connie, 10 years? Over the past 10 years or so, we've been working in different parts of the country on different approaches to entrepreneurship to help people crystallize their ideas and develop very simple statement of a goal and a set of steps or tasks that they're going to pursue in order to achieve the goal. And then, importantly, to identify the resources required to perform those tasks. And the most critical resources are the people on the team. And so what we've learned in these anecdotal experiences with literally thousands of entrepreneurs is that there are certain essential qualities that we need to have represented on any team that wants to be a varsity team. And those qualities represent vision, which is the ability to see things before they happen, the ability to see around corners, the ability to see associations of things that connect in ways that are not apparent to other people. And so a visionary is someone who sees a world that is not immediately apparent to some other people. And then, oftentimes, visionaries are so caught up in the ethereal and the scope and the breadth of a new world that it may be difficult to focus. So I've been told throughout my life, Roger, you really got to focus. You really need to have a goal. And my response to that has been, I am focused. I'm pretty much focused on everything. That doesn't tend to go over well, particularly in jobs where people are depending on me to perform a particular function. There needs to be leadership, which is, simply stated, a leader is someone that others want to follow. Leader is also someone who can listen, particularly listen to the ideas of a visionary and understand that vision in a way that the leader can articulate a direction and a goal through which to implement that vision. And the leader, in setting that goal, steers the ship and is not necessarily involved in managing the implementation of that vision. So a third essential ingredient, a third essential quality, and I'm positioning this as a quality rather than a trained discipline, is management. And management means accepting the direction of leadership and translating it into those Gantt charts and PERT charts and schedules and budgets that allow that goal and direction to be implemented in tangible, physical resource space. And the manager then, that quality of management requires execution, which is not only the ability but the desire to get things done. And we've met with many, many, many people over the years, and in a group of people of this size, if we ask the question, how many of you would prefer to work on your own idea, or how many of you would prefer to work on somebody else's idea? We might presume that the lion's share of people would want to work on their own ideas. It simply isn't true. It simply isn't true. A significant percent of people that we've worked with have said, I simply want to implement the idea of another. And I get my gratification from seeing a product go out the door, or a service implemented, or a goal achieved. And we need to be aware as we form teams that certain people will have certain predispositions or potential to play different roles, and we honor and respect and value people in each of these categories in a horizontal way, because each one of these talents is critical to a successful team. And finally, measurement, which is the question as to how we determine whether we've achieved the goals that we established. And oftentimes, measurement is perceived as an afterthought. We set the goal, we do the work, and we say, okay, how did we do? Well, measurement needs to be built in at the time we set a goal. We insist when we assign projects to people that at the time they establish their goal, they define not only the metric, the measurable deliverable of that goal that demonstrates we've done so successfully, but we also insist on their creating a data sheet that shows exactly how those measurements are going to be displayed before we start work. Because if we cannot visualize the way the data is expressed, whether it's a poll, a survey, the number of cookies sold, if we cannot conceptualize the way the data is presented at the outset, we will never know whether we succeeded. So, with those thoughts in mind, behind every venture, behind every team, behind every person is an idea. And one of the things that we really need to understand in pursuing an idea is, what's the value of an idea? Why is it valuable? To whom is it valuable? And the answer is that an idea has no value unless and until it's been expressed in a clear, concise, compelling way to another human being. If an idea resides within my mind and stays there, I will have made no contribution to this planet as I pass into my next life. And so I have a responsibility to express my ideas in a clear, concise, compelling way. First of all, to find out whether they're meaningful ideas. And second of all, to give those ideas to others. So my daughter once said, if I give you a penny and you give me a penny, then we each have a penny. If I give you an idea and you give me an idea, we each have two ideas. We have a responsibility to express our ideas as a part of our role on a team. And expressing that idea to others can be part of our everyday lives. Coffee shop conversation, sitting in the school library, meeting after church. We have an opportunity to talk with people about things that are really important to us. Within the context of a team, communication occurs through specific channels and pathways. How many of you have ever seen a conversation between a visionary and a production person on a manufacturing floor? Anybody know what that looks like? Because the visionary says, how come you don't get the big picture? And the manufacturing person says, what the heck is this guy smoking? So there are pathways for communication, and typically, as I mentioned earlier, the leader is responsible for understanding the vision of a person with an idea. And the leader is responsible for communicating that vision to management with clearly defined goals. And management is chartered with developing the plans that can be communicated to people who are involved in execution and to people who are involved in measurement, in order that the execution and measurement people are aligned with the overall vision and leadership in order to get things done. Any questions so far? Anybody still awake? Okay. So moving from, I'm awake, moving from the chemistry of teams to the mathematics of teams, what we've observed is that there is a relatively reproducible pattern in the beginning of inception of an idea and translation into a product that begins with a person with an idea. One person with an idea. And if that person abides by the responsibility to express in clear, concise, and compelling terms to other people that the nature of that idea. And if that second person is interested in the idea, shows some kind of enthusiasm, then we end up with a resonant pair of people discussing an idea and expanding it and refining it. In the words of Arlo Guthrie, how many of you are old enough to remember Arlo Guthrie? At Alice's restaurant, when he pointed out that, well, if you get, two people getting kind of excited about an idea, and then if you get three people jumping up and down about the same idea, well, then you've got a movement, right? And it turns out that the most difficult part of building or allowing the creation of a team is this transition from one person with an idea to a resonant pair of people who cares about the same idea. Because in pure chemistry, as we form this kind of bond, the ability to attract other molecules or people becomes ever so much more powerful. That the first engagement of a person is the highest risk and the most difficult to accomplish. Once we have a resonant pair, then, it becomes easy for two people with a shared idea and the enthusiasm around that shared idea to attract a third person. And once we have a third person on our team, we have a trinity. We have a trio. We have the opportunity to have representations of several of those essential qualities: vision, leadership, management. And then in our experience, the further expansion of that team ideally results in a core team of about 5 people. And those 5 people typically have the qualities required to form a unified, well-aligned idea, direction, plan. And now at this stage, when the team is energetically harmonized, now we can begin to ask the question, what are the core competencies that we need in order to accomplish our goals? So we heavily ascribe to the philosophy that the first thing to do is to form this energetic, resonant team of people based upon their qualities. And through the collective intelligence of that harmonious team, we now have the processing power to make important decisions about the people that we want to engage to perform specific functions. So the actualization of an idea follows these essential steps. So vision really is seeing something, seeing a world that's different from today, seeing a world in which we have created joy or beauty or eliminated pain or poverty. And it's important for us each as individuals and as teams to understand our intention. In what way do we intend to change the world for the better? And typically that's done by identifying a problem or an issue that is painful, people that are suffering, inequity, different forms of imperfection. If we can define a problem for which there is an audience of people who would like a solution, and if we can propose a solution to address that problem, we now have an opportunity. And an opportunity can be defined very clearly by an inventory of the people that we anticipate will benefit from the solution that we propose. Those are the beneficiaries. And at the same time, the benefits that those people will receive in the presence of our solution. So once we have an opportunity, we then move into the very simple steps of setting a goal, clearly defined goal, outlining the steps required to achieve the goal, identifying the resources that are necessary to perform each step, and the most important resources are people. How many of you are short of money? Anybody have an issue with money? So Beth, I'm not going to pick on you because I know you'll get the right answer. Let's see. Mike. If I wrote you a check today for, you pick the number, 10 million, 100 million yen?
I think
10's good. What would you buy with that money? Stock. Invest for the future. The point of the matter is that what we really need to do is to define the resources that we need in order to achieve our goal. And then we can pay for them through money, or we can trade, or we can attract people who care about working on our team to get that job done. Just wanted to say a few words about the NanoMedica team. There are several people in the room who have contributed to the formation of this team. NanoMedica moved here about 3 years ago based on the strength of collaborations with Wake Forest, with Forsyth Tech and others. And we have assembled an A team of people who are actively engaged in pursuing our opportunities, not because they're being paid for it, but because they see an opportunity to change the world for the better. You can see the list. Stephen is here in the room. Connie's here in the room. It's quite a talented group of people, and we're proud to have them on board. And we believe that even though we pay them a pittance, they love working on our team because they feel the gratification of pursuing something that's important to them. Another team, Venture Realization Team, this is a nonprofit organization that aspires to help entrepreneurs throughout the community. And this is names of people who have been instrumental in that activity. And we're blessed because all of these people are volunteers. Nobody takes a dime. So there is an attractive energy that keeps these people together and focused on making contributions because we experience gratification when we're able to help other people. And I have no words to better express the words on this slide. Thank you.
Roger, are you entertaining questions?
I am definitely entertaining questions if I have your help.
Excellent. Well, I'm happy to help. Questions?
My name's Chuck Thomas. I'm a business major. My mentor. Your speech that you gave here, you're a co-founder of a company. Do you give that to your company so that when you leave, you know you have the same awe and people look up to you for inspiration as if you do here? Question is, as within knowing that that's how you can manage your company, why do you allow yourself to be obtainable to your company and yet other CEOs don't even want to be touched by the community, but yet they give to the community?
First of all, it's an inspiring opportunity for me to fumble on stage. I see our team and our company as being an organism. Connie, would you like to comment about that? would you like to say a few words about, well, let me answer the question first. So I believe that the leader of a company is a servant. And that my role in a company is to allow people to realize their potential. And the messages that I've presented here are central to our way of doing business. We were among the first, Connie and I, in some of our activities, to bring into the business environment and the academic environment terms like love and mutual respect and treating everyone like a genius. I am uniquely qualified to be myself. I'm the only person that can be myself, and I have a responsibility to be myself. And I trust that each of us is uniquely qualified to be ourselves. And each of us is the only person qualified to be ourselves, and each of us has a responsibility to be ourselves. Our people will perform at their highest potential if we recognize that they are geniuses and they do not need hand-holding. What they need is to know that their boss is available if they have a problem or an issue that requires attention. Would you like to say a little bit about teams as a reflection of biology or of the human body?
Okay. I always love to use examples.
Connie, that's not a popsicle. That's a microphone.
Like think of a body. Body have organs, right? Each organs cannot work on its own. Each organ provides a unique function. But in order to have this function to really work at its best, it is collaborating with others. Can you say, I just need a liver, no heart, no other things, I'm still okay? Not possible, right? So a team is like that. You see, Michael Jordan become a Michael Jordan in his career because he has other two playmates with him. When he left, the other two playmates cannot reach their highest. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. One of my hand be restrict. So that when he left the team, there's no longer excellency for the other two player, which I don't remember their name, but whoever loved the basketball knows, right? And so when three of them in any team, they become a team. So you always, well, I'm Chinese, so we always grow up with says, a man always needs three helpers. You build a foundation, you put one post down, it's not a foundation. You need another three to help you to have foundation. So team is such a way. Team is, especially core team, is like building a foundation. And when you have a solid team, you will have a solid business. Business is your building, is your construction, and the team is the foundation. And that's what
Thank you.
presenting.
And it applies, oh, I have one. It applies not only to business. We focus on business because that's one of our primary areas of interest. However, all of our businesses engage academic players, people from nonprofit companies. We have a very interdisciplinary team. And I'm aware, for example, within this room of people who worked diligently on a very effective team that managed to get a grant proposal out today. The Forsyth Tech team, Mike and Russ and Mike and others have been working together tirelessly, and they work as a team, as noted by the fact that they do not simply delegate and say, you go off and do this, you go off and do this, you go off and do this. They pull together a proposal that's competitive because it has the best thinking of all the players. So this applies in academic environments, it applies in business environment, it applies in social environments. Any other questions? Yes? Do you have the microphone?
Yes, my name is Mickey Gardner. I'm one of Miss Ray's students, and I'm curious what prompted you to decide to use the method of team rather than going with the traditional method of basic management.
Well,
I also like your concept too.
thank you, thank you. It's been a stepwise learning experience for me. I come out of a technology and product development environment in which we very much operated based upon functional organization. We had people working on chemistry, we had people working on instruments, we had people working on engineering, and we had project management to integrate all these functions. I began 20 years ago or so when I first recognized that I'm unemployable, that if you put me in a corporation, sparks will fly and I will end up flying out the door. It became apparent to me that I would be better off working as an entrepreneur because a lot of my ideas were creative and perhaps not very practical. As I did that, I developed a model for what I thought were the essential ingredients of a business, particularly a technology-enabled business. And those three pinnacles were the business, which is intending to serve a customer need or preference. And then we developed technology that allows us to develop a product to achieve that business goal. And then we develop intellectual property in support of the technology that allows us to maintain our competitive differentiation. And I worked with that model with many people over a long period of time until the point at which it began to look somewhat empty to me. Because on a day-to-day basis, I was interacting with people. And I had an epiphany, which was, this model is useful, but the most important ingredient is the people that allow those functions to work. And so it really became a realization that, number one, people are our most important resource. And the other key lesson for me, and Kevin alluded earlier to my realization when I went to Berkeley, that I was not as smart as a lot of people. I've been a pretty arrogant and self-serving person through much of my life, and I have actually thought that I'm smarter than I really am. But as I realized the importance of people, I realized that I have my strengths and weaknesses, many weaknesses, and that if I rely entirely on my own skills in achieving a goal, I am very likely to fail. And that if I can identify people whose strengths correspond to my weaknesses, then we have a high probability of succeeding. And so I'm not going to be dismissive about conventional approaches. They work very well in corporate environments. But I do have a frustration in corporate environments that oftentimes there are not incentives that inspire employees to really own the opportunities that they're pursuing. And in some cases, in being treated like employees, they don't feel like they're fully being recognized as people. And so I think the corporate structural aspects are very important, but we really need to invest our energy in the people in order that those structural arrangements have the best impact. All yours. Anybody need a loan?
How do you keep it fresh?
Well, I'll start with,
In chemistry and stuff like that, it's always going to be, once you get something else, it's going to be the next. And then on top of that, another question is like in chemistry, you learn by your mistakes. because it's like, that's how we got silver putty, that's how we got chalk, and that's how we got grease pencil. It was mistakes that we could find that they could. And so now, since Ford and CA Technologies are learning that they can learn by their mistakes instead of brushing it out underneath the table. So it's like, do you like to go and see, okay, what's our weakness and how we can build on that? Could that push you along to the next project?
Yep. Well, freshness, the comment that you just made, freshness is in part honesty, our willingness to admit, I think I might have goofed this up. Can you guys help me resolve it in some way? But I think that probably the most obvious answer to your question from my perspective is we keep it fresh by a continual pipeline of new people. So we develop a team which works very well together, and then there is a risk, as you get a very effective team, of falling into patterns. And those patterns can sometimes become conditionings in which we can be so focused on what we have done in the past that we fail to step out and see from the outside in what we might do differently. And so one approach to addressing that is we invite students, graduate students, friends, colleagues to come visit us, if they'd like to hang out with us, if they'd like to take on a project. We are constantly looking for people who are interested in what we're doing because they bring fresh ideas. Even people who have no idea at a technical level what we're doing are capable of asking questions that really force us to reevaluate our thinking. And so we place a very high priority on fresh eyes. If I attempted to explain to you our business, NanoMedica's business is we recognize it takes $1 billion and 15 years to develop a new drug. We think we can help drop that time and cost at least in half, right? If I attempted to explain the technical details, I would bore you, but as I did so, you could ask fresh idea questions like, well, why would you do it that way? Or why would you do it that way? And quite frankly, those virgin perspectives are some of the most powerful influence in terms of our thinking, because we do not want to converge into a state of stagnancy. So it's attracting people who want to participate in different roles and being willing to concede that we just don't know what we don't know. And we never know where the next great idea is going to come from.
Okay. So just to follow on Connie's analogy about an organism, certain cells can turn into any organ and others can only turn into one type of cell. So when you talk about your different qualities, are people born with that innate quality, or is that something that could be nurtured, accumulate more than one potential option, and how? What's the best way to nurture that?
You want this one? I'm going to defer to the experts on this topic. I have an answer, but if you want a better answer,
I don't know.
I'm going to introduce my spiritual
I just give
guide.
you a break then. Indeed, that fact is existent. Some people just natural with certain skill set, certain ability. Other people with other sets, and most of us can nurture to a certain degree. But excellency is born with it. That's in our experience in counting with people, because we each has a different makeup, energetic makeup, and that making us, especially good at this thing, but not good at that thing. And when I learn this, and I'm smart and I learn working hard, but I can never become as excellent as that person's naturally be. So depends on the requirement of the team. The team is need excellent quality. Then you're looking for those natural born people. If just for good quality enough to get a job done, then anybody can be trained one is as good. So it depends on the project needs. Like those very important, I don't know, CIA movie. This movie seems like they all have to excellent or else be dead. So that kind of you have to natural born ones, right? Is that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think this is actually an approach that Forsyth Tech is imagining, in the sense that we have training programs that are designed to align people's skills with industrial needs for new product and service development. And one of the challenges is to be able to communicate with incoming students the types of jobs, the types of careers that may be available to them as they exit. And that's a very important driver, because in order to employ people, we need to make sure that their training aligns with the needs of industry. At the same time, and I'm sure, Kevin, you see this in your classes, there's nothing more special than a student or an incumbent student, because Kevin's students range in age from continuing students to people who are returning from careers. There's nothing more exciting than to see someone in the lab or in the classroom say, man, this is really cool. There's nothing better than to see somebody say, you know, there's something. When I went to school, I had no idea what to do, but there was a defining moment. I was in a physiology lab at Berkeley in 1970, and I had the opportunity to, is any of you squeamish? Okay. I had the opportunity to dissect a lamb heart. Well, it was the first experience I ever had with seeing something biological and how it worked. The pumping action of this heart, the valving, the plumbing, et cetera. I was so excited I took it home to my dorm and put it in the fridge. And I called my mother that very night and I said, I know what I want to be when I grow up. No, not a butcher. I wanted to get into cardiology. So there's something about that passion that touches a chord in terms of our earliest potential as human beings. And if we can find that and then develop skills that support that, then we have the opportunity truly to be ourselves and unique and different from anybody else. And I call that utopia. And you read the book, Steve, about focusing on our talents. Do you want to comment on that?
Sure. Actually, it was a book recommended to me by Don DiBattista called Now Discover Your Strengths. And what was very interesting about that book was too often we try to fill in gaps that we have. And the premise of the whole book is forget the gaps. You're never going to be very good at those things you're not good at today. Instead, focus on those things that you're good at and then build the team around to compensate you for the deficiencies you have elsewhere. So it's very much in line with what you're talking about.
Yeah, Kevin.
I just wanted to give you a compliment.
Yes.
The physicist Richard Feynman from last century had a wonderful thing to say. Actually, I found that it had limitations, but it's interesting how you've expanded on the idea. He used to say, know the answer to your question before you begin asking it. And I've always thought that that was somewhat confining, especially as the decades go by. But when you start to talk about what a company does in its development and its business model, you've included a new thing that we don't commonly think about as an equal partner with the others. You can pay someone else to obtain resources. You can also trade for them, which can be very common as well. But the third thing that you've mentioned, which of course is the main thing you're handing us today, I think, is that you can attract talent, interest, and enthusiasm for what's going on. So I see that as you're approaching entrepreneurial pursuits, as well as technical pursuits, the way you're defining the problem is you're charging us to go out and pay for what you can pay for, trade for what you can trade for, but also be mindful that you can attract talent and love and support people.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you for summarizing the message that I guess I may not have sufficiently clearly and concisely expressed. But let me ask, in closing, let me ask us to do an exercise. How many of us went on vacation last year? Oh, Beth. Yeah, you sold your house at the lake. That's too bad. How many of us plan to go on vacation this year? Okay. How many of us have clearly defined our primary goal for the next 6-month period? Okay. I'd like us just to take a minute silently and close our eyes and feel or think, with all that's going on in life, within the next 6 months, what is the most important goal or intention that I choose to pursue? Whether it's family, work, volunteer, church, it doesn't matter what it is, over the course of the next 6 months, let's say by tax day 2014, what is the single most important goal that I would like to accomplish? And without attempting to convey any magic bullets, I'd like to invite you to ponder that tonight, tomorrow, next week. Just tuck it away on the clipboard. And as you think and rethink this goal, ask yourself the question, what are the critical resources that I need to achieve this goal? And since we don't have a follow-up scheduled, I'll give you a sneak preview. I think what you will find in many cases is that the most important resources that you need are information, which comes either from the internet or from people. I know where I get my information. Information, expertise, guidance from people who have been there before, and people who are willing to help, whether it be in providing guidance, in providing emotional support, in showing up on a Saturday and cleaning out the kitchen so that we can prime it and paint it. Whatever the goal is, I believe that if you keep that goal in the back of your mind for a period of time and begin to ask yourself the question, what do I need to achieve this goal? Ultimately, you're going to find you will benefit from a team that includes people who offer information, energy, and expertise. And while that team doesn't have to be jumping up and down together, you may have an advisory person over here and an advisory person over there and a friend you touch base with over here. That is your team, even if you don't show up in uniform every day. Think of the people in your life to whom you would call to gather some insight as your team members. And then as you attempt to gain momentum for your activity, for your venture, people will say, oh, that's a great idea, that's a great idea, that's a great idea. So who's involved? I don't have to sheepishly say, well, I am. I get to say, we are. I got my buddy Bob who's taking care of the designs. Sally is over here doing all the marketing work. I've basically just been coming up with the ideas and finding people who can help me implement them. That statement that we are working as a team is exactly the statement that needs to be made in order for someone at a cocktail party to say, you know what, I like what you're doing. Is there any way I can help? That is the law of life. It's the law of evolution. It is the law of success. And it basically is forming alliances with people who develop common interests. Why? They may become rich, they may become famous, but more importantly, when they go home at night, we feel that we did something important. And ultimately, I think that's what allows us to feel good about ourselves. So with that, I will close. Thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Russ Reed. I'm the Executive Director of the National Center. We're part of BioNetwork. My BioNetwork colleagues are here, and I just want to mention, before I formally thank Dr. Cubicciotti, that we have a lady that's not here right now. I was looking for her, and I know she came in the beginning, but I think she has to probably pick up her kids or something, is Brooks Foster, and she does this lovely graphic. So I just want to make sure she's a part of our team. I want to make sure that she knows that she's recognized for her hard work. But Roger, thank you. Connie, thank you. I always have a great time with you. Sometimes go to breakfast with this man. It's just absolutely fascinating. I think we went for breakfast. We thought we'd spend a half an hour, and I think we spent 3 hours together. And it was the best 3 hours I'd ever spent, and a fabulous breakfast. We have another lecture coming up in November. It's November 21st. It's a lady named Michelle Sanders. She's the general manager of Biogen Idec, which is a large bioprocessing pharmaceutical company down in Raleigh-Durham area. She has a very unique story. She'll be here, and I really hope that you would encourage other people to come and see her speak. She is a person that grew up in North Carolina, really came out of North Carolina, but not with very much means, and was able to ascend to be general manager of one of the biggest companies in the world in our space. So I'm very, very excited about having her here, and I hope that you'll all be able to come. So Roger, again, thank you on behalf of the college, BioNetwork, and the National Center.
My pleasure.